Hey guys, so welcome to the fourth episode of Cloud Code Live. I'm joined here by Gwen and Antonio, and today we'll be talking about technologies and tech stacks that we work in our day to day jobs. So I think we'll start with the weekly stand up as the starting segment. Who wants to go first?
Um, I'll go first. That's fine.
Okay.
Not much has changed since last week, I believe. Last week I, got the apartment. Still got that. Buying lots of packing supplies and figuring out what I need.
Hmm.
Prepping my first talk as a cloud advocate, which is going to be on Azure Functions. That's happening in 2 weeks. Putting that together. Been experimenting with TikTok, but I'll save that for content of the week later. Um, yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to this week.
Cool.
Well, I would say that the biggest thing that happened is that I basically finally finished recording my first YouTube video, and I
Nice.
redid all the audio and stuff. It's not out yet. I have to finish a couple of things still, but that's been like the biggest progress of my week. And otherwise, I would say that's most the highlight of my week for sure so far at
Cool.
least. And tomorrow I'm starting puppy kindergarten with my dog, and that's about it.
When do you think you'll upload the video, the YouTube video?
I shooting before the end of the week. We'll see. I try to ride a good wave of like when people are looking for it.
Okay. Cool.
Nice. For me, it was my birthday yesterday, so a lot
Woo!
of partying. Yeah, I was
Yay!
talking to Antonio before, and yeah, so I've been tired today. Barely made it to work, but I think that was the big highlight for me for the week. Also, oh, we did rank first in our local league for volleyball
Nice.
today. So, yeah, that went really good, and yeah, I think we did pretty good. We're getting a gist of like there's a team chemistry now because I haven't played with them in the past. So we'll see.
We wanted to talk about all things tech stack related. We'll talk about like what we work with day to day. Maybe we could also talk about like at our first gig where we actually had a stack. Like, what was that stack?
Hmm.
Um, and then like like what's our like our ideal stack for like
Hmm.
side projects, like what's our go-to, um or any things that we want to try, we want to get better at, stuff like that, right?
Sure.
So let's start off by what do we work with day to day. So
Hmm.
for me, um in the advocate role, right, it's really just focused around like what I'm doing talks on, and right now it's Azure Functions, Cosmos DB. Yeah, those are the two focuses at the moment. So it's like all just like serverless stuff and like, yeah, serverless functions and then serverless
Hmm.
database. Um, then I'm probably trying to think if there's anything. Yeah, no front end stuff. It's all back end stuff at the moment.
Okay.
Um, I'm trying to think. Oh, and does GitHub count, like GitHub Actions and stuff like that? I guess that sort of counts as your stack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The get at yeah the
Yeah, GitHub
actions.
Actions. Yeah, that's my go-to for CI/CD stuff. At the
Interesting.
moment, yeah, that's like for work now.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
Um, Terraform. A lot of Terraform.
Hmm.
Um, we picked it and named it as our default IAC or infrastructure as code tool that we'll be using across organizations. So, yeah, um, I've been I've been familiar with Terraform for quite a while now. So, definitely the project that we have kind of fall in my plate. So that's what I'm dealing with, along with Azure and AWS. So
Hmm.
that's why we picked Terraform because we have to manage infrastructure in two clouds now. So yeah.
Like, okay, I guess I forgot to mention the cloud platform and the language that I use the most,
Yep.
but it's kind of a given.
Hmm.
So Azure and then .NET is primarily my, it's like always my go-to language. If I can work with it, I will. So those, yeah,
Okay.
those are the four. Do you have what? So obviously Terraform is like its own thing, but besides
Yeah.
that, are there any other languages that you work with?
Not really. Bash, Python, and PowerShell every now and then, and that's only used for scripting
Mhm.
stuff. Uh, but yeah, other than that, I think more on a personal note, I'm learning C sharp,
Mhm.
getting into the .NET world. That reminds me, I have to do the third live stream for learning C sharp. And yeah, other than that, for the past 2 years, I think I've used JavaScript, um, whether it be Vue or React, for my tech stack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I was gonna do actually C sharp live stream tonight because I want to practice something for a demo on my channel. If you
Mhm.
wanted to join, we could do that, but we could talk about that later.
Sure.
Anyway, welcome back, Alf. We're just talking right now about the tech stacks that we use in our roles, like our jobs currently.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So I would say that my main tech stack is SQL, DBT, Python. There's a good degree of Terraform when I'm doing when I'm helping out with a DevOps team, or if I'm setting up some cloud-related stuff. We're all based on AWS, and the biggest service I would say that my team uses is Batch, AWS Batch. So for like a scheduler that we built in house, and I do use it to a degree Java, like JavaScript, but it's not like a main part of the job. It's more like side projects where I create like front ends with the React and like back ends in whatever language it may be. Like it can be TypeScript, it can be Python, or can be like I'm tinkering with Go as well now, but
Just
it's
to
all.
clarify, this is personal side projects, right?
No, this is as a work.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is work stuff. Side projects is mostly JavaScript. I guess that can be a whole different
Yeah, different
like
question. Yeah.
question there, because that's gonna
Mhm.
be entering like weeds.
What about so this is for like our current gig, but in the first role that we had some sort of tech stack, what did that tech stack look like for you? I know for me it was so like the first time I actually had like some sort of programming or scripting, it was my
Mhm.
sysadmin gig, and that was
Yeah.
a lot of PowerShell. I did do some C sharp stuff because they like when I had I guess downtime, they had me help the
Mhm.
devs out. And they were doing stuff with like what's it called? Dot ASP. No.
ASP dot.
Yes,
ASP.NET.
ASP, but it's like MVC.
Yeah.
Yeah, MVC. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, but that wasn't like I would say maybe that was like twice a week or so.
Mhm.
But the most stuff was just automating things from like 365 and our server administration with PowerShell. And then they used Azure DevOps. I want to say no, Bitbucket.
Okay. Yeah.
Bitbucket for
I use a big bucket now in
Yeah.
my.
for version control and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I'm trying to think what else did we use? Yeah,
What
and
did you
that
use for
go ahead.
building, like building pipelines and stuff? CI/CD.
Um, I think it was Azure DevOps.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, later that turned into all right, yeah, more Azure stuff, more .NET stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, kind of like graduated into those tools.
Yep.
It wasn't like a complete shift into anything different. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think it was. I'm trying to remember hard. A bit of SQL or SQL. I don't know. I still don't know how people pronounce it. I prefer SQL, but yeah,
I would say SQL. I'd say SQL most of the
yeah,
time.
yeah, and yeah. I think I was the weak. Like my job required SQL, and I was really weak in SQL. By weak, I mean like I had to learn a lot. So that was like my main focus for about 6 months.
Mhm.
Uh, Getting up to speed with that, and then some HTML, JavaScript every now and then, not like daily. But then for tooling, we use Bitbucket and also TeamCity for deploys and
Uh,
CI/CD stuff. So yeah, think hopefully I'm not missing anything. But yeah, recently we have made the shift to Azure DevOps. So we live and breathe in Azure DevOps, and we're trying to shift our pipelines to DevOps
To
from
DevOps?
TeamCity. Yeah, we already did the migration for Bitbucket to Azure DevOps.
Mhm.
So it would make more sense if we have the pipelines too in DevOps.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's for me.
My first tech role, I was using VBA for Excel. That was most of my day to day was VBA in Excel and some degree of Python for web scraping and but it was mostly VBA for Excel and Salesforce and like scripting.
Hmm.
So that was interesting.
What kind of things does Salesforce do? I've heard of it. I know it's massive. I just don't know.
It's a CRM system for
Yeah.
everything. Like I was using it in this venture capital firm, and a lot of what I was using it for was pulling documents. So I was just building scripts that are like automatically pulled documents with specific like headings and such from the documents. So that I could ingest them in Python and I could speed them from Python to Excel basically. And to a degree, I had to do some manipulation, but most of the work was in Excel because it was for a finance team. So most people use Excel, and it was just automating a lot of like very, very manual
Yeah.
portions of it, like creating like from one source to another and respinning these valuation tools. And so it was just a ton of VBA, and oh my god, VBA is such a pain to work with. It's insanely painful. Because that's literally basically in VBA you're basically thinking like you have to do your memory collection basically because everything you're doing in a cell at that point. It's not like so it's like almost it's interesting as a concept. Like it's not exactly true that you're doing memory collection and such, but it's like it's interesting concept, but it's just like so brittle that is like crazy to work with. And I wasn't like a major expert. I just knew my useful stuff, and then I learned along as I was building. So the very first code was horrible. The very last code was pretty good, and but
Like
there was a
most
lot in
things.
betweens.
Yeah. Cool. How do we feel about? I see this question a lot on tech Twitter. It's like, would you rather work at a role that has like a tech stack that you're interested in, but pays you less,
Yes.
versus one that you're not interested in, not as interested in, but
It
pays you more?
for me, it depends on the situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think earlier in my career, um, and yeah, I had a lot of that. I would pick something that paid more because it
Yeah.
just made sense at that time, rather than having a preference of tech stack. Even because earlier in my career, I was less experienced. So
Yeah. It's like you're like, what is a tech stack, right?
exactly
Like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think now it's more about like stability and me being me. I need to know, or I need to be happy what I'm working with, even if it's, I don't know, less money, because I've reached that point. I think where, I don't know, a cut in the paycheck won't make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alf, what about you?
Would say I'm. It's very similar. Like I'd never been in a specific amount of like debt from schooling, so I at the beginning I was like more like let's find a job that like pays the most among the opportunity. But the thing is that then when I actually started looking more into the technology that at the jobs, I definitely started looking more be more interested in using the tools that I want to work with or I want to expand my knowledge on and potentially further my career with compared to being paid more for an older stack like or something that I'm not interested in, and that's where I am right now. I'm definitely more interested in getting exposed to the right tools because it always pays off in the long term,
Yeah.
anyways. So if it's a good stack, like if it's modern stuff and similar, then it pays off even if you're getting paid less now. Money is not that much of a problem, anyways. But it's definitely like if there was the urge, the risk, definitely that plays a role.
Yeah.
How about you, Gwen?
I think I would agree. Like early on, it was just like whatever is the job, I'm down for it. Because even with legacy, even like working with 2008 R2 Windows servers, like there's a
Yep.
lot to learn, even though it's legacy.
For
And
sure.
also, a lot of times, like we sort of talk down, or maybe Tech Twitter talks down to these legacy stacks, but there's a lot of that out there. There's a
There is.
lot of companies that still utilize these legacy stacks, these legacy infrastructure, that kind of stuff. So it's not, I don't necessarily look at it as that if I learn something that perhaps isn't like what everyone's talking about and everyone wants to learn, I'm not going to be able to get a job, because I don't
Yeah.
think that's the reality. Now, yeah, I would definitely now in where I'm at now, like favorite something that I would enjoy working with over like going to someone that like somewhere that pays me more. But again, that could change too, right?
Yeah.
That could like next year, maybe I don't know, life changes and for some reason I need to make more money, and then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go find the gig that pays me more no matter what, kind of thing. So it's such a hard question to.
Yeah, it's totally scenario or situation based.
Yeah, there is not much that like there is not a situation in which money can solve everything, because like at a certain point money has like a kind of a diminishing return. If anything, it starts to become like I don't think it's a problem. Like don't get me wrong. It's not like if you get paid more it becomes a problem, but it's just like it doesn't. You don't need more than a certain amount to maintain like any degree of like you like like regular person lifestyle, like no matter where you are. So just going more and more and more, at a certain point there is the needs that are fulfilled, so they're like the Maslow chain, like pyramid of needs. You have to move to the next step.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. Speaking about Tech Twitter talks a lot about JavaScript, and I know you two like to use JavaScript for your personal projects, or
Yeah.
maybe not as much, Rishabh, now, but you used to.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about our go-to stack for personal projects, like currently,
Sure.
or maybe like stacks that we've used previously as well, because it could be different, right?
Yep.
I guess mine is, for me, it's boring because like what I do at work is also what I do, just because I like that's the beauty of the .NET world. It's like you want to do mobile, you want to do now like Blazor's becoming like a really strong, I think, competitor in maybe not strong competitor, but it has legs in the web dev world now. And you can use .NET for that. If you want to do serverless, you can do .NET for that. If you want to do backend, you can use .NET for that. So I don't find myself switching, I guess, that aspect of it. And then Azure, just so is the go-to. So yeah, my answer, I don't really have a different answer than the stack that I'm using currently for work. So I'll let you two talk about this one.
Sure, you gonna go ahead, Elf?
Yeah, so my go-to in most like it depends. The only thing that changes really is the deployment, the backend. But the front end is always basically the same, and it's Next.js, Tailwind CSS, and usually if I'm using GraphQL, it's Apollo. And if I'm using REST, it's either React Query or Axios. Actually, like together, similar. And React, obviously. It's TypeScript or JavaScript. It depends how I'm waking up in the morning, basically. But for the backend, it depends if I am writing it. I would do TypeScript and like Express.js or I was looking also recently at Fastify.js, which is similar in logic. Otherwise, if I have to use like some like backend as a service, I recently started playing with Supabase, and or I would use AWS Amplify. or a Strapi if there's like a lot of like CMS related stuff that I have to do with, and I use also GraphQL. I would use probably Strapi or AWS Amplify. That's my stack for basically every single project that I come through. I come across every idea that I have to scaffold in a few moments is create the next step, add the Tailwind CSS, and the backend is which one is the easiest to pull up in a short period of time if I have to pull it up.
Cool. Yeah, for me, it's not as fancy. It's simple. Sometimes it's simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript because the roles that I'm looking at or the roles that I was interested didn't require or weren't like front end focus. It just I needed something to show off that okay, yeah, I can code and host stuff in different architecture schemes. How I can define those. But yeah, I think I have 2 projects that use Vue and then just Node as the backend, and then as Antonio said, I use Amplify too to host them because it's just so easy. But yeah, nothing fancy. I've tried React and Next, both of them pretty similar, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'll fall over towards Vue more.
Okay. How open are y'all to like looking for new tools for like your personal stacks? Like for work, we typically don't have too much say of like things that we can change and such. But when we have personal projects, you have your go-to stack. Are you often looking for like, oh, what's the next best thing, kind of like to try and to learn, or are you pretty much just like, oh, if it works, it kind of just works? Like, what's the balance there?
I think for me, I went with C# because there was this thing at work that I was working on. We had some monitoring and we needed it integrated in some internal tooling. And because I was familiar with the API of the monitoring service that we were using, one of the fellow devs said, "Hey, why don't you like figure out the code for this? Because you're familiar with the API." And it was all C#. So I started digging in, and it was pretty easy. Just a wrapper that calls the API endpoint, populates the results, and shows them in the front end. But yeah, I think that sparked an interest for me to learn C# and all of the .NET. And then I talked to the dev, and he's like, "Oh, .NET Core is coming around," and then Tech Twitter will keep you updated about any of the new and amazing stuff that's coming out. So I'm like, oh, what's the difference between .NET Framework? Because I was familiar with .NET Framework because we use that a lot at our work. He's like, oh, we are porting over to .NET Core, and he just listed everything. And he's like, how our infrastructure bill would be way less. I'm like, how? He's like, oh, Linux. So .NET Core supports Linux now.
Cross-platform.
Yeah. And hosting will be way easier because we don't need Windows boxes, which involves Windows licensing.
Licenses, yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm not as open, but if something comes over, and as you said, like we don't have a choice at work, but if it's something interesting and I found it like, yeah, I want to do this. So that's why I'm learning C#. I think, yeah, I don't go out of my way to
learn everything
for
new.
stuff. Yeah, so I don't go out of my way to look for stuff that I can learn. But yeah, something that triggers a spark, and I'm like, oh, this seems interesting, I should look into it.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of the like I love like when new stuff comes along. So I'm like on the curve of like the tech adopters, not only for like hardware and like general stuff, and like always like try to be like an early adopter, like in similar. It just doesn't mean that I'm gonna become like super proficient at most of them. Some of them are just like trying them out. Like for example, I tried Flutter and like it. I never really dug much deeper into it. Probably might want to go back to it. I did some React Native. I definitely want to pick back up, but I don't have like I didn't like fit. Like there is when Superbase came out, I started playing with Superbase because it was so nice to work with, and it made a lot of things that would be complex pretty easy. And other like I always try new things, but the core stack always remains almost the same. And like I don't really go out of because the thing is that I'm comfortable enough with like a React, the React ecosystem that I don't really wanna like learn another framework because React literally one it's probably the most used framework in web development anyways, and two is like it does everything I need to do and I can do it pretty fast. So there's really no reason for me to pick new things in that specific department. I played with Vue once on a stream with James Tucker. It's a lot of fun. It's just that like I know that it would take me enough work to actually be proficient, and I wouldn't be as proficient in React as I am like with React. So there's really no reason to go there for backend stuff all the time, like because it's always something different, something new.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason I don't want to learn JavaScript. Like I'm really open to picking up like new Azure services, like seeing how can I incorporate them, or anything in the .NET world, because I know like it's sort of like how much what's that the topic the return on investment is going to be way more if I spend a month learning say Blazor versus learning like JavaScript and some sort of front end framework. It's just in terms of time, like it's just easier for me to pick up something like that. But I wouldn't say I'm just like within the ecosystem. I think like you two mentioned, though I think lately, so I was doing like a lot of Blazor learning and then I stopped. But I want to pick that up again, especially WebAssembly. I think that's going to like pick up a lot in the coming, I guess, years, and then do a lot more with Azure Static Web Apps. I think that also has like so much potential, and now that it's like GA, well, it's been GA for a while now. I want to like make that sort of like my go-to because it takes care of like so much for you. Yeah, similar to AWS. It's like Amplify.
It is like Amplify in certain ways.
Yeah. Or there is also like a S3 static hosting on.
But that would be more like blob storage.
Because static web apps has like CI/CD, like and all that kind of stuff built into it.
Yeah, I think it may be similar to like Elastic Beanstalk or something like that. But Elastic Beanstalk is more complex, I would say. It's more.
You can manage the infrastructure and rolling updates and stuff like that.
Yeah, I never really used the static web apps from like I never really used Azure that much, anyways. But it's. For what I can understand from like what I read about it, it's really it's an Amplify that doesn't do as many things, but it's like a step in between various services.
Yeah, I don't think you can deploy a backend to static web apps, right? You can have different. It supports different frameworks, but
your backend is Azure Functions.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a mix, or no? So Amplify is a mix of static web apps and functions, is what I'm trying to say.
What is so you can deploy a separate backend with Amplify? Like any kind
you can build like GraphQL, GraphQL API, REST APIs, all serverless, and you can like build like DynamoDB tables.
To be fair, I'm not up to date with what static web apps could do, so perhaps it might be able to do more on the back end. I'm not 100% sure, but I think its goal is to like get there. But that's like sort of out of topic. But yeah, I'd like to experiment more of. I'm a big fan of like serverless all things. Like if I can have like a obviously the front end would be static, but then your back end and your database is serverless. I'm 100% for that kind of stuff. So that's our personal tech stacks. Here's a like funny question, I guess. Would you be more open to learning a new programming language or a new cloud platform? Like, Alf, let me ask you, like, would you be more open to, say, learning how to use Azure for your personal projects or learning how to use .NET for your personal projects?
.NET.
Interesting.
Pretty much, yeah, 100%. You know why? Also because I kind of always wanted to learn how to play, how to use Unity, and the Unity is C sharp based. So if I learn .NET, I learn as well C sharp. So that will translate knowledge towards Unity development.
Okay.
But otherwise, I feel like the thing is that the thing is that I use AWS for a ton of things, but I'm not. I don't share really from using other services. For example, Supabase as their own like deployment, or Vercel. You can deploy Next.js app to Vercel, or Netlify, Heroku. Like I use a bunch of services for various things if I need to. It's just that like I feel at a certain point in terms of cloud platform. Multi-cloud, I'm not a big fan, and I guess I'm deep enough into AWS, and it does, like most cloud providers do the same things. So I'm just like enough in the AWS ecosystem to know my way around services that there is no really like major returns to like fully relearning everything in another one. But most of it would be like easily translatable anyways. It's just like understanding the names, the new names.
That's a fair point. Like, what can you do in, say, GCP that you can't do in AWS? Like,
All I say is that there are some services in certain providers that are better for than others. For example, Lambda is like there's nothing that is like Azure functions are great and everything, but in terms of performance at scale, like Lambda is still miles ahead of like most of the other offerings. In GCP, the Kubernetes offering is better than like the EKS on AWS, for example, because Kubernetes was built by Google, so they know what they're doing with their Kubernetes services. And all the Azure stuff, anything that is like, for example, I would argue anything that is like Windows based is significantly better on Azure, and there is a lot of like nice other services that are better on Azure compared to other cloud providers. Which is why you shouldn't be like too much like set into one. Even I just said like I'm mostly set into AWS, but it's because. It's just because, like, if you're really like, I don't have the problem of being at scale to the degree that I don't care if my Kubernetes is like more hard to use than AWS. You know, like I'm running these like workloads on Kubernetes that I need to use the Kubernetes offering from GCP. Otherwise, I'm never gonna solve my problems. It depends on your scale, but otherwise, they're mostly the same, I would say.
I also think it depends on your role you're currently working in, because like for me it's different. If the same question applies, I would have picked Azure over not I would have learned another cloud provider rather than learning a new programming language, just because in the role that I'm currently in, we have to make decisions on which cloud provider to use for an upcoming service or upcoming product that we might have to launch. And those decisions can only be made, as Antonio said, if you know the cloud provider where certain services are better than a competitive cloud provider.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there here's like a sort of like a side note. Does Lambda have a way to write like stateful functions? Does anyone know? Because like Azure has like the durable functions extension. I don't know what like Lambda's equivalent is. Does anyone know? No.
Not top of my head.
I would say like I don't like you would need basically to use step functions to have like stateful function. Like, and it's I don't given that like step function is a way to orchestrate various services, and specifically also Lambda, you would have to name the step functions and use state machines. in functions, yeah, in
Alright.
in step functions, yeah.
Cool. I've always been curious, but I've never popped into the AWS world to see. Like I've done like one like maybe Hello World tutorial with Lambda, and after that, and this was like years ago, like when I was
Mhm.
studying for the developer associate. After that, I don't think I've done anything with it. Yeah, the UI is kind of confusing to me. That's because I'm not very. But to be fair, the UI isn't very like consistent in AWS in
Mhm.
general.
Yeah, no, that's one of the largest issues that like a lot
Yeah.
of people mention is that there is no like a ton of consistency across.
Mhm.
But like I
Mhm.
honestly still prefer that UI over like for example GCP or others because GCP just crams so much stuff in one. Like if you open
Mhm.
GCP, the main page, it's like 4 columns of like
Like a
separate stuff.
dashboard.
Yeah,
It's
it's
Yeah.
like
a
it's pretty complex.
yeah.
Honestly,
But
I don't love it.
Azure does have a dashboard too, which is not as messy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So
it's not as messy. Like
yeah.
I like the thing is that about Microsoft, I'm not like I love certain products, but
Mhm.
I don't love others. Like for example, I'm not a big fan of like their design language for like things like Outlook. I think it's Fluent Design. It's called. I don't remember. But
Mhm.
it's like the I don't love the UI pieces of
Mhm.
Microsoft too much. They're functional. It's just that I don't love how they look specifically.
Yeah.
But that's a personal thing. So that's why I kind of tend to fall back to the like AWS because I'm more familiar. But it's like
Mhm.
I do have a lot of things like for example when they changed the Route 53,
Oh
like they
yeah.
changed it from they moved everything to like a wizard instead of
Mhm.
like having something that you can do in one page. That's
No.
kind of annoying.
Yeah. Our whole
And
team
sometimes yeah,
was so pissed.
yeah, you can they can have something that like is pretty meh in terms of
Mhm.
interface, but overall,
Yeah, I can't remember which service it was, and we used one of the toggles pretty often. It was in AWS, and the UI changed, and everybody just flipped, and they're like, "How do I turn this toggle on or off now?" But luckily, there was a button to go to the old UI. So,
One thing I'll mention about GCP, and I don't know if this has changed recently, is it's like project or based, right? Like you click
mhm.
in the
yeah,
project and you only see the resources
Yeah.
in
in
the
that
project,
project.
yeah, which
Uh,
is the best thing about
yeah,
GCP.
I really like that. I would agree it is a little overwhelming, especially
Mhm.
that blade on the left side, and then you literally
Yep.
see all the services just right there. Like that is very overwhelming. But it's sort of like a it's kind of like a fun, like very
Mhm.
it's like probably the most modern UIs out of like the most
Oh yeah,
popular.
Yeah.
you I looking like in terms of like a design of
Like
it,
yeah.
it's definitely most modern looking, but it's all like all the Google related stuff is very
Mhm.
modern, sleek, and similar.
Mhm.
Just like it's nice to look at, but it's not nice to use as much. But
Yeah,
definitely
you don't want to scroll through everything
the
to find what you're
project
looking
thing
for.
is the best thing in probably every cloud provider because you could do kind of the same in AWS, but you would have to create a whole
Yeah.
different account. Like you have to create one account per project, basically, almost,
Mhm.
and that doesn't make sense.
Is it? I think it's called organizations, right?
Yeah, no, you can like you
Uh,
have a one organization with the
Yeah.
root, and then you just create a bunch of different accounts
Mhm.
that you pay with the root account,
Yeah.
but like instead each one has their own project, so you can track. You can basically
Mhm.
nuke the account and nuke everything that is into the project. Talking
yeah,
about nuke account, there was something that is called. I think it's. I have to check for it, but it's called. I think AWS nuke.
Yeah. I
I
think.
That
feel like
is like
someone tweeted about that
Mhm.
somewhat recently.
yeah, that is actually useful because if you don't know what is happening, that's really what you need. It's literally just nukes every resource from an AWS account.
And then Azure is like somewhere in between with resource groups,
Yeah.
which is I quite enjoy like that kind of organization.
Yeah. I also like the idea of subscriptions.
Ah, that's right, subscriptions.
Mhm.
That is yeah,
Because
because it's
I,
still one account, but you can have as
yeah,
many.
exactly. Especially like with work and stuff. Like they have a test subscription for me, and then you also have the MSDN stuff, Visual Studio Professional subscription.
Mm, mhm.
and then you have your personal credits that you get for a year, and then you also have the Learn Sandbox subscription. So
Mm-hmm.
it works out pretty good.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I would ask you the same question, Rishabh, but I feel like you use Azure, AWS, and GCP to an extent where it's like, oh, I don't have an equivalent question asking you like, would you rather learn this cloud versus this programming language?
Oh, I already answered that. I would pick Azure, right?
Yeah. Like that specific
Mhm.
and the question, yeah. But I feel like nah, I don't have like I was trying to come up with like
Mhm.
like different options, but I don't
Yeah.
really have like a good one. For
Oh,
that.
I see what you mean now.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the big question is though, why, where do you think your dislike for JavaScript JavaScript is rooted in? Like, why do you think that you don't want to learn JavaScript entirely?
I have an issue learning things that I'm told to learn. Be told like I'm
I
like
see.
well like it's like when I'm like a child in that aspect when it's like when they tell you to not do something, I tend to
Mm.
do
Do
it. And
it
I
and
also have I'm a sort of like a fan of like underdog things. And
Yeah.
.NET has always been like everyone has always trashed on .NET.
Mhm.
Everyone is in sort of it's like I guess Azure, Microsoft has always been seen sort of like the nerdy loot, like AWS was always seen as the cool one. So for some reason that attracted me to Azure, and then also .NET was also always seemed like I tweeted today like .NET rocks, and someone was like, oh, whenever I see .NET and legacy stuff, I just run away, and I'm like, I don't get that mentality. So that's what like attracted me to that. But
Mhm.
that also like because like getting involved in like tech Twitter, I guess just being a person in tech who interacts with Twitter, you will see a JavaScript tweet at least several every single day, right? And it just like it's like in my brain, like, oh, must learn JavaScript, must learn JavaScript. Like you have to like this is why this is why, and all these framework wars and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I'm not involving myself in this like ecosystem or in this anything because I don't I can't even keep up with it by not being part of it. Imagine being part of it, kind of thing. Like Alpha, when you were mentioning your stack, you were like this JS and this JS and next JS and next JS and this other thing JS.
That's
I can't.
the thing. I feel like that's the thing about JavaScript. The big thing about JavaScript that drove me to JavaScript is actually the fact that it's like very easy to pick up, but it like takes a long time to actually. You can master JavaScript. It's like there are people that know JavaScript in and out and such, but it's like there's like hardly like it's so many people will never arrive to the level of like I don't know Dan Abramov that knows like all of the JavaScript like mental models and such, and I feel like it's just that it's so easy to pick up that is accessible. And the fact that a lot of people are saying stuff on Twitter about JavaScript is just a testament to the fact that it's like so easy to pick up. And even like the person that just starts, usually what do they learn is like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then you start getting in the weeds once you've done your little like playground with your playpen around you in JS and similar. Then you start going in the weeds of framework and such, and I just feel like it's easy in works with my mental schemas enough that I can do things quickly, and I like seeing the things coming up and like seeing stuff showing up in my page after I write some code and there's something that pops up. So, and I feel like it's not as immediate. Like you need to have a higher learning curve to arrive at that point. With other languages, like there is much more setup to put with compared to like JavaScript, for example.
I would just like to mention, like as Gwen said, you can see several tweets, not even in a day, but in one of your scroll sessions on Twitter, you would see several JavaScript tweets. And Tony, you said a good point that it is like an advocate of why, like, you should learn JavaScript because it's so popular, right? And how many people have adopted it. But I also think that it can be overwhelming for someone who's starting out to see so many opinions about a language, and like how crowded and how like there's, as Gwen said, there are so many frameworks. So like someone who's starting out, he or she will be like, I don't know where to go because okay, I learned JavaScript. Now what? Do I go with Next? Do I go with React? Do I go with Nuxt? Do I go with, I don't know, there are a million frameworks out
whatever new is that. Well, my other thing is not even for beginners like me, because I wouldn't necessarily call myself a beginner.
there. Oh no, yeah.
But like I wouldn't know where to start. Like, should I? Also, another very popular JavaScript tweet is like, oh, you don't need to know the fundamentals to pick up a framework like, you know, React or something. Or like, oh, you do need to learn the fundamentals of JavaScript before you can dive into it. And I recently saw one of those, and then the responses were like, someone tweeted that out, like, before diving into some framework, you got to learn these basics. And then someone was like, stop gatekeeping, blah, blah, blah. And then Twitter turns it all into that, right?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like that's it's a gatekeepy mentality to say that you have to learn X, Y, and Z before you can do that, which is like what a lot of people say about like learning cloud. The same thing is like you need to learn this, and this before you can even start learning cloud. I feel like you need to have like a grasp on certain things before you can do frameworks, because the thing is that React, especially like if you do React hooks and such, if you don't know things like arrow functions or like destructuring or basic things in like ES6, like the latest, one of the latest flavor, not really the latest flavors of JavaScript, but it's harder because there are things that you're like, why is this working like this? So if you don't know the language itself, how it works and what are the quirks with the language, it's probably harder. It's not that you can do it, but it's definitely going to be a steeper learning curve that could be easier if you were to learn JavaScript first and then jump in a framework. But otherwise, you can start with the framework technically, like you learn along and very basic stuff. It's just going to be a harder learning curve. That is my opinion on it. Honestly, I don't think that you have to follow certain paths before you can learn things. I feel like the technologies that are like that are very few and very far between. Like Kubernetes, you need to know a lot of shit before you know Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Like before you even start learning Kubernetes, so much stuff that you have to know already. So that's one of the technologies, for example. And I feel JavaScript frameworks is not one of those.
One other thing I wanted to like agree with you on is the fact that like front end is, especially when you're starting out, since you have like that instant, you know, you run it after each thing that you apply and you have that instant feedback, it's great, right? Versus like if you were to do like a back end or maybe even to an extent like a console application gives you that kind of feedback. But yeah, it's I guess a bit more rewarding. I guess in general, I've just not been interested in web dev now Blazor because of I'm interested in how like .NET works in that capacity, but not necessarily because I want to make web apps or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a good topic. I think so we pretty figured out Alpha's pretty much JavaScript person, I'm pretty much a .NET person, and then Rishab's somewhere in between. So we've covered the we've got our bases kind of covered here.
Yeah.
What is everyone
.NET.
Yeah, what does everyone use for CI/CD? Are we all GitHub people?
For personal, yeah.
Yeah, GitHub
Actions.
Yeah, it's
or
great.
Amplify.
It's quite
GitHub Actions or the code stuff on AWS. Like the developer tool on AWS. Code build, code build, code deploy, code pipeline.
I don't know.
Is that equivalent to like Azure DevOps? Sort of? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mostly use GitHub Actions, if not probably Amplify.
Okay. Cool. All right, I think we could probably wrap up this topic. We're almost at the hour. We got to close out with content of the week and then anything else that we want to talk about. It was good. See, we were kind of worried at the beginning. We're like, what are we going to talk about? And then we got here. All right, content of the week. I could start, but I've been sort of trying to figure out TikTok, and it's just such a wild. It's so different because my background is YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And TikTok takes it to the extent where it's like you have to. I thought I like cut the fluff on my channel at the moment. Like my videos are like always less than 10 minutes, but TikTok, it's like you got to fit it all in less than like a minute or something like that.
Yeah.
Like now you can do them longer, right? But people, I think you can do up to 3 minutes now, but most people want it like that short content. So I'm trying to figure out that. Like today, I uploaded a video. My TikTok is made by GPS, but today I uploaded a video like about like a Linux, like a 2-minute video on a Linux command, like the stream editor command.
Hmm.
And it's doing pretty well. So yeah, follow me on TikTok. That's my content of the week.
Yeah, I've
Shameless-
always had
shameless
that
plug.
thought in my mind whether if I should join TikTok or not. I
Right.
did a poll for
It's fun.
Instagram, and the people said no, don't come back.
Oh, for Instagram, yeah, Instagram is like, I would say pretty useless I use it
Yeah.
more for like personal, for stuff that, you know, I'm packing, I'll share that, or I'm apartment hunting, I'll share that kind of stuff, right? But not in terms of like tech stuff, not really my thing. But TikTok is fun. And some
Okay.
of it, sometimes it does remind me of Vine. I don't know if y'all used Vine.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
But there's some stuff on there that I'm like, man, this is great. Like, yeah, this is good
Sure.
stuff.
Okay, so I need to get on TikTok.
I lose a lot of time on TikTok. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's so refreshing, like from tech Twitter, right?
Mm.
Like, because you have to put in more effort. Like, let's just talk about like tech TikTok. You definitely have to put more effort into it than like a tweet or
Mhm.
like just copy paste. Like, you could copy paste, but even your copy paste, you have to film something, right?
Yeah.
Unless you screen record someone's TikTok and you just upload that, right?
Mhm.
Which also, that algorithm that they got on there, it's crazy. Like, you watch one video like for, I don't know, for a couple of seconds, or you watch a full TikTok, like they'll start serving you those like similar videos. Like, it's insane. But all right, we don't need to talk more about TikTok. Does anyone else have a content of the week?
Yeah, my content of the week. I think this was released a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it's not super fresh yet, but you're just in time for the last 3 days of the sale, and it's just JavaScript by Dan Abramov, which is sitting on the React core team. And it's, if you don't know JavaScript, if you never learned JavaScript, it's a wonderful way of learning JavaScript. I was in the like pre-release like feedback session, and it's such a wonderful way of thinking about JavaScript, and also it's illustrated by Maggie Appleton, which is pretty famous for like their tech illustrations, and it's really like just a pleasure to watch. And right now it's actually $25, so it's actually super worth it for the price. And if you really don't know JavaScript, it's a super worth investment. I mean, even if you know, it actually makes you rethink about the language itself. And this is vanilla JavaScript. It's no frameworks, no everything. It's just the language and learning about the language itself.
I would love for us to perhaps try to tackle something like this, but specific to cloud computing. Because I'm looking at it now, and this is such a refreshing take on educational content. Like like how you were talking, like everyone has like a Gumroad, everyone has their like $10 ebooks, and it's all, they're all pretty much like, all right, yeah, I guess like this. They are very, they look, you know, copy paste sort of. I'm not like trying to bash anyone who has, you know, their ebooks on Gumroad, but yeah, it's like, yeah, this it just looks new. I like it. These illustrations are so clean too.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good time when GPS gets into JavaScript.
Yeah, well, yeah, I feel like you put this in here for like, oh, I should just get it now. I mean, it's for $25. That's really good for this.
It is. Yeah, no, I would like I can like share actually the screen so that you can see what we're actually discussing about. Maybe it's very good. It's just like I went through the whole thing, and it's extremely worth watching and going through and learning. And actually, because there are exercises and they're not like exactly coding exercises. It's more about like thinking about the code without like actually writing exactly code. But again, it's so refreshing and so nice. And Dan Abramov like teaches in a way that is like just it looks like it's basically the Little Prince for JavaScript.
Okay. All right. That's a good tagline, one liner for it. All right. Maybe I'll look into it. I don't know. Probably not, but Rishabh, you got anything?
Yeah. So I know Gwen already listens to Darknet Diaries,
Oh yeah,
and I have been a huge fan of Darknet Diaries from the beginning. Um, and yeah, I think I should wear the T-shirt in the next episode. But yeah, I'm a huge supporter, and he came out with a. So Jack is the host of the show, and he came out with the Pizza Problem episode 94, I think, which is super, or episode 97.
That's the
So
latest one, right?
yeah, that's the latest one that came out 8 days ago, and yeah, it was really interesting. Goes over someone who had an Instagram handle
Oh,
that
I
was
remember.
really
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that was
yeah.
really popular, and there were people trying to get that handle, and there were some hackers that were trying to get that handle.
Yeah.
And the problem that the guy runs into is the hackers start delivering these pizzas, which are cash on delivery, randomly to his house and to his parents' house. So yeah, go listen to that and see how he tackles those problems. And yeah, and I
That
feel
was
like Jack does a pretty good job with his research, and like the episodes are like really well laid out.
yeah, and I remember I've also listened to every single episode,
Mhm.
and around there was a good time where he had like so many episodes back to back that were just so
Yeah.
good. Like,
Yeah.
I remember it was like the Xbox that had the
Mhm.
Xbox series
Mhm.
had
Yeah,
like a couple of
three
episodes.
three episodes.
That one
Yeah,
was so
so
good.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, highly recommend that podcast as
Mhm.
well. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and the way he delivers it, like
He's
especially
passionate
for the
about it.
for the Xbox thing or
Mhm.
the Xbox story, it felt like it was a movie, and we were living in the lives of these
Yeah,
hacker group. Yeah.
that I think those 3 episodes were like probably one of his best ones. Yeah. All right. Wrap up. What we got anything to plug? Anything else to add towards the end?
Well, my video is gonna probably come out next week. So
Yeah.
first video on YouTube actually. So let me know.
Yeah, and I'll be having a video in like 30 minutes. So
Oh, you're uploading something?
yeah.
Cool. All right. That's it for this episode. We made it in pretty much a month because it's 4 episodes. This is the 4th one.
Mhm.
So look at
Yep.
us. We're gonna try to play around
Nice.
with the format next episode, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Expect the cooler stuff and interesting things here and there.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. Alf, you want to say?
Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for the support with following us and all the interest that you're showing to this podcast. So we'll talk to you the next time, and peace.